Hello again, and welcome back to the Slow Flowers Show. I'm Deborah Prinzing, and this is episode 584. I'm so thrilled today to share my conversation with Dee Hall. Dee is the owner and creative energy behind a specialty cut flower farm and urban microfarm in Norfolk, Virginia, named Mermaid City Flowers. Dee is featured in Black Flora by Teresa J. Speight, published by BLOOM Imprint earlier this year. Dee is quoted in the opening lines of the book saying, "I wanted people to know my business is rooted in joy. I wanted to take something I love and share it. Flowers are beautiful, but also serve such a practical environmental function, and I feel lucky to be a steward of the garden." Dee follows sustainable, regenerative growing practices and has a special interest in native perennials. Her floral enterprise grows blooms for local customers, mostly sold through CSA subscriptions and as everyday arrangements for local delivery. Dee is collaborative and community minded, having founded two important floral groups: the Tidewater Flower Collective, which is an organization providing continuing farming education, farm visits, and efforts to connect consumers with the source of their local flowers. And she's the founder of Black Flower Farmers, an online virtual community of Black specialty cut flower farmers, which you can find on Instagram and through the website blackflowerfarmers.com. Lucky for me, Dee traveled from Virginia to Washington State last month to attend and design the flowers for a friend's wedding here. She had time to swing by the Slow Flowers cutting garden on her way out of town, so we enjoyed lunch together inside my greenhouse, followed by a conversation that we recorded for you. Let's jump right in and get started, and I'll share our sponsor thank yous after the interview. Welcome back to the Slow Flowers podcast, and I'm coming to you from my greenhouse in my backyard in Des Moines, Washington, with my special guest, Dee Hall. Hi, Dee.
Hi, how are you?
I'm great. Thanks for coming over.
I'm so excited to be here.
I know, all the way from Virginia.
Yes.
Dee is the farmer-florist and owner of Mermaid City Flowers, right?
Yes.
Okay, and you're in
Norfolk, Virginia.
Norfolk, Virginia. And why are you in Seattle right now?
One of my best friends got married over the weekend, and so I was here for the wedding, and I was like, you know what? I'll do the flowers. And so it was an opportunity to, meet with local growers and have some locally grown flowers for this wedding. It's
Oh my
pretty
gosh.
exciting.
Yeah, your friend's so
Dahlia
lucky.
season right now, and the dahlias here are just incomparable.
Yes. Did you get your hands on any specialty mums?
I did.
Another cool
Lots of, they're just gorgeous colors right now. She wanted a dark, moody palette, which is perfect for this time of year. It just worked out really well.
Well, when we air this, I'd love to show a few photos from that wedding.
Okay,
great. Well, we met on Instagram, which is, I guess, how most people meet, and I
Yes.
just reached out to you, and then we met in person, fortunately, in August. At the ASCFG conference. But prior to that, some people may have seen you on the pages of Black Flora by our friend Teresa Speight.
Yes.
And that was just such a privilege to have you in that book.
Yeah, I absolutely, really loved being a part of it and getting to know Terry and you and all the other growers and, other creatives featured. It has been fantastic.
I know.
Yeah.
We need volume 2 now for all the people we missed.
For sure.
Well, you're going to help me with that, I'm sure. So give everyone a snapshot of Mermaid City Flowers and where did that name come from, anyway?
So Norfolk is known as the Mermaid City. We are along the Chesapeake Bay, lots of rivers, lots of water nearby. And also Norfolk is kind of famous for having mermaid statues everywhere that
So it's
were
kind of
commissioned about a little over 20 plus years ago. And so
so it's the thing.
yes, and it's also a Navy town, so there's kind of that thematic element of the kind of water related.
It's certainly a way to let people know that you're hyper local, right?
For certain, and I wanted something that reflected that I grow where I'm planted, so to speak.
Yeah. Well, you do grow where you planted because you're growing where you live, right?
I do. So I grow in my residential neighborhood. I have like a large lot at my house, and I have a few other neighbors. So it started off with my neighbor across the street saying, hey, I like flowers, but I don't know what I'm doing, and I know you're doing this, so if you'd like my space, I'd be happy to offer it to you.
Wow.
He has these beautiful raised beds with drip tape that he's hooked up to rain barrels and on the pump system, like an irrigation system, which is pretty cool. And then my garden is forward facing, so I'm always outside and pretty visible. And then more people started seeing, oh, hey, if you need more space, I've got space there, and it's kind of gone from there. So I'm like, if you see me walking up and down with my gorilla cart in the neighborhood and my straw hat, just wave, just say hello.
Wow, it's truly a community garden. You have
for
the
sure.
support.
Yeah, I really love my neighborhood, and I'm happy that I live in a community that's so supportive of one another, and also of the locally grown flower movement.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, how roughly, with all those parcels added up, how much acreage do you think you have? Is still under an acre?
Under an acre still.
Yeah.
I'm in the process of expanding for next year, so I don't know where I'll be. I'm trying not to take too much on because it's still just me. But I put out a call for space a few weeks ago, and I've gotten some people say, hey, I've got this space and I'm not doing anything with it. Would love to have you use it if you'd like to,
That's so cool. When I first heard about that concept, years ago, I met this gal named Sarah Nixon.
Yes.
From Toronto.
Yes.
And her whole classified ad language was, flowers seeking gardens.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought it was kind of a cute way to...
Yeah.
And she was getting people who she didn't know offer her plants.
Yeah.
So you're keeping it closer to home.
I am for now. I like, Sarah and I have spoken though.
Oh, okay.
And I think her requirement was like something she can drive to within like about 5 minutes. And right now I'm keeping it at that, but willing to expand, based on need and, want.
Well, as I understand it, and I'm lucky that I kind of know the story because I edited Black Flora, but there was this sort of moment where your horticulture gardening passion morphed into flower farming. Can you talk a little bit how that happened?
So it happened when I was looking for flowers for my wedding. I was, contacting florists, the wedding was going to be in the spring, and I was saying, well, this is what's seasonal, and I know I want like this, and this.
Because you already knew what would be
I knew what would be in bloom as a gardener, and I wanted the flowers to be locally grown. The wedding was a botanical garden, and so the weddings there are sustainable only. So usually, like you have single-use plastics and that type of thing. And I really wanted the flowers to kind of match the venue and just the ideas that I have about, sustainability and the local movement, and I couldn't find anybody local that had, a flower farm where I can have the volume for a wedding.
Right.
And so...
And what you envisioned, because you knew what was going to bloom when.
Yes. Yeah. And so I was like, well, I grow some flowers, and at that point I had a lot that was kind of shaded. Then we had some trees removed that were not healthy. That kind of opened up my ability to have a larger space. And, it kind of took off from there. So I had this space. I started growing. It was kind of why not? Well, nobody else is doing it. Look around.
Yeah.
Why not me? And it kind of spiraled from there.
Wow. What year was that you kind of launched?
End of 2019, 2020. Mm-hmm. So, it's been an interesting...
crazy timing, right?
Yeah, it's been an interesting time to start a business, but it's done well. I have found a lot of support from my community, of people who didn't realize, flower farms in the U.S. are a thing. Oh, you can do that, here, and not, out, we are surrounded by... larger agricultural areas, and so people always associate growing anything, with large scale operations, and I have a much smaller scale operation, but it's working for me, and because of what I do, I've had the opportunity to start a local growers collective. There are about 25 of us now throughout the area, all within about an hour's drive, and so I tell people, if for some reason I don't have the flowers, I can probably still get you flowers that are pretty local considering the other options with one of the, from one of the other growers in my collective.
Let's just talk about that a little bit, because there's so many different models for these sort of flower hubs. Is this super structured, or is it kind of casual, or like how did you set it up?
Yeah, so it's informal. I just found people through Instagram, and I was like, oh, hey, you live here. You want to be my flower friend? Huh? And it kind of went from there.
It's a good thing you're not shy.
Yeah, yeah. And they were all like, sure. And they kept saying, yeah, okay. And then, people found me on Instagram, heard about me or heard about the group. And it kind of just evolved organically. It's pretty informal, but like this weekend they actually had, I'm sad not to be there, one of the growers is hosting like a end of season dinner for all the other growers on her farm. So, I mean, I love that. We have occasional get-togethers. We will do, design workshops. We are trying to do more formal things, but like during the growing season especially, it's just time. Yeah. It's impossible. Yeah. So at this time of year and throughout the winter, it's better for us to do, to try to get together and have any events.
What's it called?
The Tidewater Flower Collective.
Okay.
Yeah.
And is there like a one day a week where you all bring what you've just harvested, or is it more of an online kind
It's
of thing?
more of an online. We have a chat. We did work on a co-op this year, and it kind of fizzled out. We'll see if we'll try to start. That was the Tidewater Flower Co-op, and we may give it a shot again next year. But I think it was just like a logistical. It was difficult. I mean, it's difficult to coordinate lots of different people. Bringing all their things, and then also getting all the local florists and designers on board with local flowers. We've been lucky in that we have some. Like there's one designer in particular who has committed to using 60% local flowers at least, and I know she buys from a lot of the local growers weekly, and it's stuff that she can't, sometimes I'll freelance for her, and boxes arrive and like 30-40% of the material is unusable. And when you have local flowers, every single thing that has been harvested is available for use. You have 100% usability.
That's such a good point. I forget to mention that in terms of the fact that there's just so much shrink and loss with imported flowers because of the way that they have to be shipped.
Yeah.
That's so interesting. Now, do you wholesale to florists too?
I do not wholesale to florists. I mostly do. I have subscription services. That's gone really well. I'm changing my subscription model a little next year. And I do weddings, events, workshops I did a lot of this year. It's fun teaching. I got to do a lot of workshops, especially for a youth group. And I really loved working with teenagers. I thought, like, here, is this cool? Is this good? But they, they obviously want to make something that's pretty and they find it cool. You grew this here, I can grow these. I used to grow flowers with my grandmother. I love talking to people about flowers and hearing the stories of how, they feel connected.
They just need a little encouragement.
They do.
And not to look silly,
they do. Right? Yeah, I'm like, don't worry, I have a teenager at home and he's into flowers, so he'll be like, Mom, do you have hydrangeas? My friend likes hydrangeas.
Oh,
it's
cute.
really cute.
Yeah. He's gonna hook everybody up with local flowers.
Yeah.
Well, that's interesting. So the main launch when you really formalized as a business was the subscription program. Then that was sort of your primary
subscription,
business.
And I was doing farmers market. I did not do farmers market this year. I filled in for some other growers as needed, but I find I just like it better for me, especially with the small scale. Like for farmers market, I don't have a cooler.
Right.
So for me, it takes like a full 2 days of prep, and then I have all this product, and it has to move, or else I have to figure out what happens.
And Virginia can get hot and muggy, right?
It absolutely can. Summers can be brutal.
So then your flowers would just fade away.
Wilt. Yeah. So I found the subscription to be much more successful. In fact, my son, I hired him this year as my delivery driver too, and he improved my process. I do have to say that he was like, there's too much water, the paper comes off if you do this. So he really had a lot to say about helping to improve my process. And I was like, okay, kid.
Family business.
Yeah.
So that is it that people, what is this, the way that that's set up? Is it every season?
It's spring.
Or?
Yeah, I have spring, summer, and fall, and it's every 2 weeks, and I have like two different sizes, and then I have a monthly one too. So
Okay.
starting whenever I first have flowers, this year it was March. The tulips, I had tulips a few weeks earlier than everyone else. They were just in a nice warm spot, and they popped, and
People snatched them up.
people were hungry for colorful things early in the season after the dreariness of winter.
Yeah, wow. So the fact that you're doing all your growing outdoors, you have nothing undercover,
No.
right? And then you're doing a lot of sort of direct to consumer retail sales.
Yeah.
Where are you doing your production, like for weddings and all? Do you have a studio or?
I do it from home right now. I do, in theory, have a studio in my garage, and it's just, like covered in vessels, pretty much.
Yeah.
But yeah, everything is done from home. I do have a bedroom that I can utilize for that. I have an attic that I use for, I have growing space, and then my garage too that I use for growing space.
For like seed starting?
Yep. And I'm thinking about doing hydroponic tulips this year in my basement, especially after the ASCFG conference and seeing, Von Trapp flowers. I was like, oh yeah, we could really get on board with that.
Who needs a house? I can just turn my house into my greenhouse.
Yeah, why not?
I love that. Well, what you mentioned tulips. So is that kind of your first crop of the season, Dee? And walk us through what are your primary crops?
In the early springs, tulips, ranunculus, the big ones, anemones, not so much, and then we I do some anemones, but I don't find, like this year, the tulips and ranunculus were really spectacular. I got 3.5, 4 foot tall ranunculus.
Just really great yield, huh?
Yeah, and it was incredible. There's so many things. I had really great Orlea. I had a sea of Orlea this year. I do I like stuff that's multi-use, so I have lots of, raspberries and, blackberries. I love foliage and fruit using in arrangements.
I love that.
I grow lots of native plants, and so I love to incorporate those as well, things that people have never seen. Sometimes I'll put seed heads in, and I'm like, you can plant these, and you can grow your own native plants in your own garden or your own pot, or even using stuff like basil. I love when people come back and tell me, oh, I left it and it rooted and I planted it. I'm like, that's the ultimate in sustainability. I cut this, you enjoyed it as a flower, you can use the leaves, and then you can let it root and plant it again. It's pretty incredible.
Well, it's like you're educating your customer while also making them kind of more invested in your business. They're not going to probably start growing everything themselves and not buy your flowers. But they understand the process a little bit more.
And I find that a lot of my customers are gardeners themselves. I always find it funny, I'll go to do a delivery and I'm like, this is an incredible garden here. And then I always, I send messages, I'm like, your plants look amazing. And I've just found it funny how even though these are people who clearly have their own flowers, etc., they still enjoy having those things that are unusual. Like Lysianthus is one thing that people are like, I didn't know. And someone's saying, I didn't know. I grew these in Florida. I didn't know they could grow here. And just exposure to flowers that they may not have seen, things that are different from what they could get in the grocery store, or, understand that, we had the ability to grow these things too.
That's so cool.
Yeah.
Well, you mentioned the workshops. What are you teaching when you do the workshops? Are they at other locations?
Yes, they are. So it's just I do a seasonal bouquet making workshop with whatever is available. So I did a tulip one in the spring. I did one that was primarily sunflower based in the summer, and then with fall on the way here, I may do a wreath making workshop with dried materials, kind of keeping in the theme of the seasonality and using what's available.
And you're already starting to dry all those annuals for summer. So
yeah, I am. I gotta cut the last of all the gomphrena and the marigolds and the jewels of opar and celosia and all that stuff that's kind of come to its end. Yeah.
When you get home.
Yes. Yeah.
That's so cool. You mentioned the botanical garden. I would love to hear about your relationship with the botanical garden.
Sure.
Because it seems like a really special place.
Yeah, so the Norfolk Botanical Garden is kind of a rare gem. It was a WPA project. As far as I know, it's the only WPA botanical garden project.
Wow.
It was the land was dredged and then planted by Black men and women, 225 Black men and women. I am on the President's Council for Inclusion and Diversity there, and we put on an event every year in remembrance of those growers who planted this garden, but then because of segregation were not allowed to enter the garden for 30 plus years. So we know some of the names. We have 75 of the names of people who were there. And we are always looking for more.
Wow.
So if anybody hears this and happens to know a story of, one of those WPA gardeners.
So it would be like maybe somebody's grandchild today would
yes.
remember this.
Someone's child, like another council member is, her mom was the last surviving WPA gardener that we know of, and she died like 5 years ago.
Wow. That's so special.
But yeah, there's all this like oral history that has been lost. Some people didn't want to talk about it because it was too painful.
It wasn't positive at all.
Yeah, they did all this work and then they did not get to enjoy the fruits of their labor.
Wow.
And it was a difficult subject to talk about, as you can imagine.
So now are there, I think this is happening in public gardens around the country, that they've been so white and so elite that there's huge amounts of any community that aren't, of any population that's not going to a public garden.
Right.
So are you trying to do outreach?
We
or
do
education?
have efforts towards outreach. The garden has lots of different open and free days. I know in our council we've talked about ideas for how to get transportation, how to transport people who might not be able to get to the garden on their own.
Right, for sure. There's no public transportation
that comes into the garden. So, how do we get, more marginalized members into the garden?
Remove all those.
Those barriers to entry, so to speak. Partnering with like local youth groups. There are various projects that are kind of in the works and ideas that we're talking about. We also, I need to review the email. We have started a green industry scholarship, and there was a lot of discussion about who we wanted it to be for, and it's not gonna be like for somebody who's gonna be necessarily a traditional college student that is gonna, major in horticulture, etc. We wanted to open it up to people like me that may be a career switcher and may want the funds to attend a conference or to take a class or to do something else that's not necessarily the traditional path, because there are lots of ways into to enter this field, and we don't want to exclude anybody. So we had lots of thoughtful conversation about how to do that, and we're really lucky that the president of the Botanical Gardens is really open-minded and supportive of all these projects on board with everything. Completely.
And they're lucky to have you too, because it sounds like you're bringing a whole different perspective to
Yes, I think they like having that, having somebody who's actually working out in the field, so to speak, rather than just a
checkbook gardener.
Yeah.
We need those too, because they pay for a lot of things.
Absolutely.
But no, I love that. I'd love to visit someday. It sounds like a really remarkable place.
It's fantastic.
And what an effort too to capture the history. There's lost history, but maybe through publicity, you'll start getting more of those family stories.
Yeah, and we are hoping to submit an exhibition for inclusion, hopefully at the African American Museum of History and Culture. So it's especially important. We're trying to.
Oh my gosh, that'd be so amazing.
We are trying to, really find those stories to keep.
Yeah. Thanks for sharing that.
Yeah.
You are doing another really special project that I just kind of, honestly, sometimes you just hang out on Instagram long enough, you start seeing what people are doing. And you started Black Flower Farmers Group.
I did.
And now, did you kind of first announce it on Instagram?
I never announced it.
Oh, it just sort of snuck up on me.
Yeah, it just I just did the same thing like I did with my local collective. I started finding, I was like, I know I'm not like the only black flower farmer, and so like I just, hey, you're black and I'm black, and you grow flowers and I do too, and we sell those flowers. Would you like to be in my group? And so I did that, and then we just added more and more people. The group is international. We have someone in Canada, we have someone in the UK, we have somebody in South Africa, and we're always like looking for more people. So if there are any black flower farmers that are not, currently in the group, get in touch. You know, like this summer when I went to the ASCFG conference, I realized that Southside Blooms was not in our group, and I was like, hey, why you get in here? How have you not been in our group? And it's really great. We have some really experienced growers like Mima from Urban Buds in there. There's another grower who's an entomologist, so we have like a bug expert in the group to help us, and it's been really great. There are lots of younger growers in the group as well, which I find pretty cool that they are making their way in,
Right. Imagine if you had started 20 years ago, right? You wouldn't have had a mentor.
Yeah, and they are making their way in an industry that, has not typically been inclusive, not by design, but just, there are lots of black people that thought, well, we got off the farm. Well, why are we kind of going back to that? And so there's been a return to, communing with the land and nature.
I agree so much. It's like this claiming of your, their talents. And also just the idea that there's,
black flower ladies are not new. Like, they were 100 years ago in the U.S. There were, black women growing flowers and selling them. This is not like a new or novel concept, and so I really love that so many people are finding their way back, and I love the group, and I love how eager everyone is to help and include.
So others. you started this also like in COVID, right? This was like a 2020
2021, I think.
Okay.
Yeah, a little, like a year and a half ago.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wow, that's amazing. And now you have a website, and people can come search by location.
State. Yep, and it shows our state, my country, and all the growers are listed. I need to update it. That's one of my winter projects.
But you are a one-woman show, though, right?
Yes.
I'm really impressed, Dee.
I do have some other growers. I love the community because other people will be like, hey, well, I can't give you time, but let me give you some money to contribute towards maintaining the website. Sure. And I'm like, really, you don't have to do that.
Yeah.
But I just love how much everybody wants to help each other, to see each other succeed. If somebody goes in there and says, okay, I need to do this funeral arrangement, and I've never done it before. What do I do? What do I need to do? Somebody will come in and give you the advice that you're looking for, and kind of,
so valuable.
Just that kind of mentoring aspect is really great to have, and I just love how both of the communities I've created have kind of like morphed and grown and become these like really cool things on their own, and occasionally I'll jump in there, oh, here's a grant I saw, or whatever it is, and it just kind of keeps going.
Why do you think you're like that? Were you raised to be very kind of incredibly generous and inclusive?
I think so I grew up with my mom and grandmother. My grandmother was a lay horticulturalist. She was a teacher, a home economics teacher, but also heavily involved in art and the arts, and I always saw, even now, people will speak about her in Teacher Hall. Like, they have really fond memories of her. She passed 5 years ago. And so I had a family that was very, generous and giving. Even now, when people show up to an event, I'm like, we're related, but I'm not sure if we're actually related, but you've been here. I went to a funeral and someone was like, yeah, I went to the hospital with your mom when she was in labor. I'm like, oh, hi, stranger. I don't know, but that's a cool story. Thanks.
It's kind of sweet that there's this investment in you.
Yeah. And so I always saw how much my grandmother helped people. She also did, she did flowers, so she did like arranging on the side. She would go to the UK and like sneak cuttings back.
Oh, you get this legitimately.
Oh, yeah.
It's in your DNA.
Yes, yeah. She would import roses from the UK. My mom remembers them coming on a boat in the 50s when she was a kid, and my grandmother, they had a sandy lot originally, and so she had to truck in all the soil because it was on an island, St. Lucia, and it was all sand, right? So they had to bring in the soil
That's
to
crazy.
build this garden that still exists. My mom's down there right now. It still exists, and it's still gorgeous even after her passing. And that's one of the things I really love about gardens is their ability to live on. I had a family friend that I grew up with in New York, and she called me yesterday. She always has plants, and she's like, I had this box of hollyhocks, and it was one of the last things I talked to your grandmother about was hollyhocks and how much she wanted them. I'm gonna send you this box of hollyhocks, and I mean, I love that I have all of these remembrances, and other people remember her for these different things. And she's like, the only thing I ask is that when I'm ready, you just give me some cuttings, which is like the gardener's way of sharing,
it's
right?
It's that kind of pass over the fence kind
yes. And I mean, I have that in my neighborhood too. Like I love propagation. I propagate lots of hydrangea, and so like I have a hydrangea that my neighbor's mom gave him, and so I grew a lot of those, and I've given them now to other neighbors. And so now this plant that was given to him by his mom is like popping up in gardens all over the neighborhood, and I love that. That's one of the things I really love. I find gardeners and flower farmers to be so generous. With their time, with their knowledge. I came up for this wedding, and I just posted on Instagram like, hey, I'm coming to town, I need XYZ. Someone said, oh yeah, my friend is there, what do you need? Got me hooked up with a florist that let me borrow like all her supplies. Thank you, Sarah, for she was like, she put everything out in a box on her porch. I picked it up, and then I dropped it off after the wedding, and that was that. Like the generosity of a stranger who doesn't know me from anybody. It was just like, sure, I can help you. And just the knowledge. I think we all just know I'm doing this for this person, and I know they'll pay it forward in some way.
Yeah.
So.
Pay it forward, that's a really good theme. I mean, that's truly what you're doing.
Yeah.
I'm so glad that I got to spend this time with you and share your story.
Yeah.
And we're talking about trying to get you back for the Slow Flowers Summit. So
yes,
that will be announced in the future.
Yes.
Anything else you want to touch on that I didn't ask you about?
No, I think that about covers all my floral related.
I mean, we could go deep into your
my floral related endeavors.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Dee. This has been really great.
Thank you for having me.
Oh, my treat. And we'll share, when we do our podcast show notes at slowflowerspodcast.com, I'll be sure to hit Dee up for photos too, so you can see some of her flowers and her arrangements, especially from this wedding you just did.
Yeah.
Thanks so much.
Thank you.
That was so great. Thank you so much for joining us today. I really admire the leadership, the gifts and talents that Dee brings to our Slow Flowers community, and I hope you get to know her. You'll want to visit slowflowerspodcast.com to watch the replay video of today's conversation. Look for episode 584. We'll also post a gorgeous gallery of photos that Dee has shared, as well as links to Mermaid City Flower Farm's social places, so you can follow along with Dee on her floral journey. Before I go, I'd also like to thank our sponsors who bring this show to you. This show is brought to you by slowflowers.com, the free online directory to more than 850 florists, shops, and studios who design with local, seasonal, and sustainable flowers, and to the farms that grow those blooms. It's the conscious choice for buying and sending flowers. And thank you to our lead sponsor, Farm Girl Flowers. Farm Girl Flowers delivers iconic burlap wrap bouquets and lush, abundant arrangements to customers across the U.S., supporting U.S. flower farms by purchasing more than $10 million of U.S.-grown fresh and seasonal flowers and foliage annually. Discover more at farmgirlflowers.com. Thank you to Cal Flowers, the leading floral trade association in California, providing valuable transportation and other benefits to flower growers and the entire floral supply chain in California and 48 other states. The association is a leader in bringing fresh cut flowers to the U.S. market and in promoting the benefits of flowers to new generations of American consumers. Learn more at cafgs.org. And thank you to Store It Cold, creators of the revolutionary CoolBot, a popular solution for flower farmers, studio florists, and farmer-florists. Save thousands when you build your own walk-in cooler with the CoolBot system and an air conditioner. If you don't have time to build your own, they also have turnkey units available. Learn more at storeitcold.com. www.ascfg.org. And thank you to the Association of Specialty Cut Flower Growers. Formed in 1988, ASCFG was created to educate, unite, and support commercial cut flower growers. Its mission is to help growers produce high-quality floral material and to foster and promote the local availability of that product. Learn more at ascfg.org. The Slow Flower Show is member supported, and I value our loyal members and supporters. If you're new to our weekly show or our long running podcast, check out all of our resources at slowflowerssociety.com and consider making a donation to support and sustain Slow Flower's ongoing advocacy, education, and outreach activities. You can find the donate button at slowflowerspodcast.com. I'm Deborah Prinzing, host and producer of the Slow Flowers Show and the Slow Flowers Podcast. Next week, you're invited to join me in putting more slow flowers on the table, one stem, one vase at a time. The content and opinions expressed here are either mine alone or those of my guests alone, independent of any podcast, sponsor, or other person, company, or organization. Thanks so much for joining us today, and I'll see you next week.